Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is actress-choreographer Neisha Folkes and garden expert Penelope Hobhouse. Neisha Folkes came to Hollywood recently from New York. She left behind memories of her award-winning years at the High School of the Performing Arts, the years at Juilliard School where she earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts, and the thrill of dancing principal roles with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. How was it dancing under the direction of Alvin Ailey?
It was wonderful. It was like a dream come true. It's every little girl's dream to want to dance with Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. And I remember as a little girl saying, that's all I wanted to do, not knowing that that dream will actually become a reality.
Did you take ballet lessons too?
Oh, yeah. I took ballet, I took jazz, I took tap, I took African dance, I took any kind of dance that I thought would get me a chance to audition for Alvin Ailey.
Well, you do say it's a dream of every girl or every person who wants to dance, because it's a very small company, isn't it?
Actually, it's not. It's a large company. It consists of 30 people, but at one time it started out with 6 dancers.
But 30 is not very many in the scope of the whole world.
This is very true. This is very true. I guess when I'm in there and I'm seeing 30 dancers, it just seems like you have a whole big family. But on the scope of things, it's not.
Where did most of those dancers come from?
Lots of them did not come from New York. I think
That's
everyone else had the same dream. They came from places like Los Angeles. Some came from Japan. Places all around the world. And that's what's so wonderful, that Alvin was able to have all these dancers come together and dance in one company, but of course show the same form, which is dance. As
you talk about being directed by Alvin, did that influence you as far as going into choreography?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just to be able to work one-on-one with him, to have him whisper things to me and direct me and inspire me to perform a certain way and to bring Neisha out. Mm-hmm. That also inspired me to watch him and be a part of when he created ballets, to be right there and have him create a ballet on me.
It's something when you say listening to him, so you got that extra bit of learning and all that, but many people who dance can't teach at all.
Exactly. It is a gift. Every dancer cannot be a choreographer. To me, it's something that maybe sounds far-fetched, but you're born to do. You're born to dance, or you're born to act, or you're born to choreograph. And I felt that I was born to do all 3 of these things.
Oh, well, that's good, all 3, because you were born to dance, choreograph, and act.
Right.
And that it gets separated along the way.
Right.
You brought a little film clip in for us to see about what Neisha Folkes actually does and how you do it.
Yeah.
Then we're going to talk about all the things that are in this clip.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's see the little clip on Neisha.
For Neisha Folkes, choreography is what she does best. She works easily with the non-dancer and the professional. Her style is exciting, sexy, funky and fresh for the 90s. She weaves movements of jazz, modern, ethnic, hip-hop and jitterbug. With a BFA from Juilliard, she's performed as a principal dancer with Alvin Ailey, a jitterbug tribute to Debbie Allen on CBS TV, a Nike commercial with Deion Sanders. She was assistant choreographer and rehearsal director to Denzel Washington and Spike Lee on Malcolm X. And on Disney's Swing Kids, starring Barbara Hershey.
That tells us a little bit about what you do, but how did you decide to be a choreographer, and at what point?
Actually, when I was very young, I started out as an actress, and then I started out doing a show when I was very young, and we had movement. And there's actually no one there that understood movement, because we were just children, 14, 15 years old, doing some acting things. And here I was also taking dance at the same time, and decided, well, you come over here and you come over here and you do that and you do that. And it became something that I loved doing.
It wasn't being pushy, was it, Neisha?
No, not at all. They wanted someone to come in and tell them what to do, dance-wise, and they welcomed it. And as the years went by, I found myself wanting to create things. I dreamt about movement and putting movement together and staging and positioning dancers on stage and putting music to it. And then in working with Alvin, watching him do this, watching a master at work only allowed me to further enhance that.
I think you talked about some of the duties that a choreographer does. I think we forget that you have to place people on stage and make something that looks looks good.
Right.
But what about teaching them the dance steps too? Do you have to do that?
Oh yeah. You have two types of dancers: those that can dance and those that cannot dance. Those that have style and those that don't. For instance, working on Malcolm X, the movie, I was an assistant choreographer with Otis Salid on Malcolm X. I had to work with Denzel Washington and Spike Lee, who are wonderful actors, but they're not dancers.
Well, you had to teach them the dance steps, because there was
Yes.
a big dance scene in that movie.
Big Lindy jitterbug number. And I remember the first day Denzel walks into the studio, and he knew me from Alvin Ailey, just from coming to the concerts and seeing me, and he says, "Oh my God, I gotta learn from her. She's a professional." So it's kind of flattering to have him, Denzel, who is an accomplished actor, realize that he has to raise up to be this dancer that he now has to do in the film.
But it also takes someone with patience like you to be able to teach it. How long did it
Yes.
take to teach those actors?
I worked with him for 6 weeks.
6
Because
weeks.
a little more than Spike, because Spike didn't have to dance as much, but he did. And working with them was wonderful, from the first step to the second step, to big movements, to smaller movements, to the movements that just have a little style.
And how do you do it? How do you make their feet work?
Count. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, and you just do it over. It's repetition, it's repetition, it's repetition. You start with the feet, you start with the music, and then eventually you start with the style. You start telling him things about his shoulders and his back, and how these people thought back in the 30s.
That's what it is. Are the steps hard, or is it just putting them all together with what you were saying?
You have to have talent. I mean, you do have to have some talent. That I can't give you.
Right.
I can give you the composition. You bring the talent.
I see. What about the influences on your choreography? What influences you as far as doing the steps or the?
I think what influences me now in '94 is the putting together, meshing of jazz, hip hop, ballet, very theatrical works. It seems like everything I like to do has to have something theatrical going on with it.
You talk about that, but does a person look at your work and say, "This is Neisha's work"?
I would hope so.
What marks do you put on it that say Neisha Folkes did this choreography?
Something that's very commercial in relationship to hip hop, also takes you into a realm of something very theatrical, which might have a lot to do with ballet and jazz, which means I might use my legs, grand pas Mars, which is taking the leg and kicking it up. I might do wonderful leaps where your knees are straight and your feet are beautifully pointed, and then all of a sudden go into something really, really kind of funky.
But that would be what you would
Yes,
do, and you would
absolutely.
be, say, the only one who mixed hip hop, ballet, jazz in a certain way.
Exactly,
I
and the
see.
way I would probably mix them, and in a very theatrical way.
Because of your acting.
Because of my acting and because of my background with Alvin Ailey, who's a theatrical person.
Oh, I see. All right, let's go from dancing to acting.
Yeah.
How did acting start?
Oh, acting started, like I said, that was the
Early?
first thing I did. I started out as an actress, and in taking these movement classes and taking different things, I decided, okay. And then I went back to acting. When I went to Juilliard, we also had an acting. I was also part of
you
the
were?
acting program there, as well as the dance program.
Does it meld, the acting and the dancing?
Oh.
Does it work together?
Absolutely. There's no way. I remember once doing a role on stage in Alvin Ailey, and I played Winnie Mandela.
Oh.
I'm playing a person. I'm not just playing Neisha Folkes.
I
I have
see.
to be able to portray the strength that this woman had. So of course I had to go back and read up on her and do my acting and understand every movement, every time I reached, every time I did something, whatever it is that I did, I have to feel that pain, and that has to come through as an actress.
You know, we want to show what you did as an actress, because I think from Winnie Mandela to this clip that you brought us is quite a long
It's definitely a long
way.
stretch.
What are we going to see?
We're going to see something that I did in New York. It's called Razor Fist, and it's an independent film that was shot there.
Okay, good. Let's see that.
What's with the attack dogs?
In this business, one tends to have strange bedfellows for friends, even stranger ones for enemies. These boys are here to see that I, how do you say, stay in the pink?
I want out.
Out of the Yakuza? Spare me your pathetic jesting.
I'm leaving the clan. Pay me the money you owe me for the last 2 jobs. Legal tender, not that corporate credit shit.
Where did you get off demanding anything from the Yakuza? Horrible twat.
Tochi, silence!
Hey, listen.
I signed on with the Yakuza as a freelancer.
Freelancer? You were a snotty-nosed kid when I recruited you. You were trained by the best. Half the cybernetic hardware in your body was paid for with Yakuza yen.
So? Does that mean I belong to you?
We own your contract. We own you.
Pass. Pass. Pay me the money you owe me for the last 2 jobs, or you're gonna have more trouble than a little bit.
Enough talk. Sayonara.
You know, I was watching, and are you still taking acting classes?
Oh, yeah, you never stop. An actress never stops working.
You did this this role that was supposed to be for a man in House Party 3. Now, how did you get that?
Well, I think they initially wanted a man to play, because she's a bodyguard, a female bodyguard,
right.
with a character called Showboat. And she spends her time in the whole movie running around chasing kid and play to get the money that Showboat deserved. And so I think they said, well, let's try reading a female. I was one of the first females that they read. They read several other females for it. And they were thinking, well, no, this is not really going to work for a female. But I think when I came in and I read the part and my commitment to reading it, they decided, hey, this might just work. And it did.
I think that was great, and I think it was probably your idea. You'll go after anything, and you'll go for anything, and you went for it, and you got it.
And I got it,
no gender boundaries here. You also are a personal trainer. I love the muscles in your arms. I wish I could have those. You did Jackie Joyner Kersey's
exercise video,
you
which
did
will
that.
be out soon, and that's a lot of fun. And now I'm also working on my own personal exercise video.
Oh, you are? Well, we're going to look for that,
Yes,
and maybe
please
we'll
do.
jump on the floor and do some exercises with you.
Let's do that. You got to keep your bodies
Or
together.
you should come to ballet class with me. I go to Tanya Lachine's class every morning.
You do? I love it.
So come.
Let's do it.
9 o'clock. We'll see you. Bye. And don't go away, because we're going to be right back with Penelope Hobhouse. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with Penelope Hobhouse. Penelope Hobhouse is a gardener, a gardening consultant, and an author of numerous books. Books such as Color in Your Garden, Garden Style, The National Trust, a book of gardening, Gardens in Europe, Flower Gardens, Gardens of the World. Tell me, Penelope, how could you get so many books, and how could you write about so much about gardens?
Well, I think one of the things that happened to me is I actually started writing really quite late in life. I suddenly had a new career when my children were all grown up. And if you start very late in your 40s, then you you write all night because you want to catch up.
Is that it?
So that's what you do. Is you know there isn't much time left. So you write as you think about gardening, you dream about gardening, you write about gardening, you garden. I garden. That's very important to me.
I don't know when you have time to garden. That was one of the things I wondered.
That's always one of my great worries, is because I have so much wonderful work which I enjoy, but in the end the thing I'm best at is gardening, and I love that, and that's my relaxation, and I think that's very important.
When I talked about writing about these books, the idea of is there that much to do with gardening that you can just keep writing book after
yes,
book?
there is really, because I'm interested in flower gardening and all the nuances of different colours that you get together. And you know, I think it was my third book, but probably my most important book was Colour in Your Garden.
And this is the book we have
And
up
that's
here.
the book,
And you
yes,
know,
yeah.
this book is a gift to Kathleen Spiegelman, who does our sets,
Right,
because she
right.
thinks you're wonderful and she loves gardens, and I thought that was a great thing to give her.
Well, that's a very nice thing to say. Thank you very much.
Yes.
But really, writing that book took me about 2 years, and I dreamt and thought about colour all that time, but I also was able to try things out in my garden, and that's very important. And I think my writing is enriched, but not only by gardening, it's enriched by travelling such a lot.
Where do you
Yeah.
live?
I live in sort of about 3 hours from London in the southwest of England, and for 14 years I've looked after a National Trust garden, and that has meant that we're open to the public a great deal.
Is
and
that
you
in the
have
same
people.
area?
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in the house where the garden is, which is very nice because you're part of it. You walk out in the evening when there is nobody there and you really enjoy the garden.
Did you garden in London?
No, I've never lived in London.
So
No,
we don't
no,
know if it's easy or not.
No, I'm a country person. I mean, absolutely have to live in the country. And yes, I think gardening in London is very easy because you have small gardens and lots of heat. And that's almost as easy perhaps as gardening here in a way, because you feel everything grows here.
You know, Gardening Through the Ages, one of the, was that the title of one of the books?
That was the title of my last book, which was my most serious book, and that's my other great interest is garden history.
It seems
Yeah.
very serious. How
It
would
is.
you research all of that? I mean, it's very
Well,
minute.
it took me about 2.5 to 3 years to research, but of course you don't do only that. I was doing other books, I was doing designing, I was travelling and lecturing over here. So,
But how do you
yeah.
find the things to put in that Gardening Through the Ages? I mean, it goes from Egypt to
well, you go
all
to
through.
you have wonderful libraries. You have wonderful libraries here. I used the Dumbarton Oaks Horticultural
Oh, you
Library
did?
in Washington, which is terrific. And there's two wonderful libraries. Well, there's more than two in London that I know very well that I can use. There's Kew and there's our own Linley Library. So you get to know, and you also get to know people who tell you where to go and look. You know, you need a lot of people, and actually making a book is teamwork. You know, you need good editors, you need wonderful photographers, you need people who do picture research if it's history.
But is it basically research, or do you go to those countries? I mean, did you?
As much as I possibly can,
You
I
did?
always go. I think when I first started writing, I believed that it would be very pure and I would never put a picture in of a garden I'd never seen. Well, you know, in the end, you can't really do that. So you do put things in, but you do talk to people and you do as much research as you can.
Well, you mentioned, besides the seriousness, I think any kind of gardening is serious, but how you've differentiated different kinds of gardens, or we differentiate kinds of gardens. We put them in our minds. I'm going to ask you about a few different kinds of
Please do.
gardens, and then
Yeah.
maybe you can tell us what that exactly means.
Right.
One of your books has things to do with formal gardens.
Well, a formal garden is really the oldest form of gardening, which devolves from the original Egyptian or Islamic garden when it was laid out as a rectangle, and it was all to do with irrigation. The garden was an enclosed area in the middle of the desert. It was like an oasis, and you had to irrigate it in straight lines and channels, and that's how the whole thing really began. And then by the time of the Italian Renaissance, this sort of gardening was linked with the beautiful villas and architecture.
Oh, I see. So it started
And
as necessity.
Yes, that's it. It started as a necessity and then became a thing of great beauty just for itself. So that's formal gardening. But once you learn the principles of formal gardening, you've learnt about architecture and balance and symmetry.
Right.
Then when you come to make the wild natural garden, some of the beautiful wilder native plant gardens and things that you find in this country, you're still using the trained eye that you've learnt from doing the formal garden, and then you can make a natural garden, but it still has to, you're painting a picture.
So
you're
it's
always
all
painting a picture, so it's like a training that you teach yourself.
What
and use
about-
different plants?
What about a rose garden? Does it
Well-
just have to have roses?
No, not at all. A rose garden shouldn't only have roses. A rose garden just has to be beautiful. I mean, that's the point of a garden, is that it should be completely
I mean,
beautiful.
should you have like high roses, low roses,
I think you
medium?
should have high roses. I hate flat rose beds, what we call bedding out roses, just flat beds of roses. That's just ridiculous. You can grow other plants with them, plants that come up through them, weaving with silvery foliage or little blue flowers coming up. You can plant them with good perennials. You can underplant them with bulbs.
So that's color. You can keep adding different
So
colors.
you can keep adding and thinking of colours.
What about a country garden? What does that consist of?
Well, I don't know what difference really there is between a country and a town garden. All those same principles come into that, but you'll probably try to capture the landscape beyond your garden if you're in the country. So you're borrowing landscape. And also it's very important, I think, if you're in the country, to make a garden that is appropriate. If I'm asked to design a garden over here, well, town or country, but the first thing I will do is take a car and drive around the whole neighborhood and area so that you begin to get a feeling of what grows there naturally, how it should look, because you don't want to make particularly a country garden that is a sort of eyesore in
Just-
a whole
just
plopped
plumped
in, looking
in.
very unnatural. You like it to appear to have grown organically there with the house.
What
So
about an
that's-
herb garden?
Well, a herb garden, you really have to look back, I think, into medieval times, and that's a historical thing. And really, normally, we make herb gardens as quite traditional little rectangles and squares with paths between them. I did one once I designed one for the New York Botanical Garden, and we have a little box parterre, which I've done so that people can actually walk through it. You don't just stand and look at it, which I think is terribly important, especially if it's herbs, because if you brush against a herb or touch it, you get this wonderful aromatic
I know.
fragrance. It's a touching thing.
That was interesting because when I was in Luxor, there are great hedges of herbs,
How
and as you
lovely.
walk
Yes.
by, just as you,
You
said,
touch it.
the
Yes,
fragrance
the
keeps coming. That
That's
smells
right.
like an herb I've been cooking with, or something
That's
that I
right.
know about.
That's right. That's
And that's
terribly
the idea?
important, and that's true, of course, of all Mediterranean plants. You know, they have all these aromatic smell, fragrance, because it's the heat, it's the oils that protect the plants from the sun. So you get the same thing in California. You go to a Californian native botanic garden like Santa Barbara or Berkeley, or I'm sure there's something here too that is the same, and you get this feeling of heat and fragrance.
That's so
the
true.
sun brings it out, but the leaves, which are either grey or aromatic, protect the plants.
That's really true, because sometimes when you go to pick basil from the garden and it smells so wonderful, you go, why don't they make a basil perfume?
Probably they do they? I actually think they probably do. They do
think-
almost everything else.
I think that's
right.
for you to do.
Yes, perhaps I should do that. Perhaps we could market it as a Hobhouse basil perfume.
That sounds good to me.
Sounds great.
We have a little film clip of you walking through some gardens.
Oh, this is this wonderful thing I did with Audrey Hepburn. It's the most exciting thing that I've done, really, was being part of a garden program with Audrey. And she came to the garden that I lived in at Tinton Hull, and we walked through the garden together. I think that's what we're going to see.
I think that's what we're going to see, and I
Right.
think it's going to show us a little bit of some of the things you talked about, color and
Yes,
formality.
because she asked me what I thought about all these things. She was quite wonderful. And of course, she really loved gardening herself.
Good, so
She was
let's look
great.
at that now.
Good.
Tintin Hull's present custodian, garden expert Penelope Hobhouse, calls it a Hidcot in miniature, 2 acres instead of 10.
What amazes me is that a garden can be so natural and almost wild, if you like, whereas the so-called bones of this garden are very formal.
Yes, they are. We have this path, which is really an axial path, leads right down the garden, and these box domes, and always hedges and walls to make geometric compartments. That's the formal part, and then the planting is completely informal. We try and do cottage-style planting, no bare earth. We really get plants very, very closely together. So you really can't see anything, and they weave in and out a little bit. All those things that just will give it this air of informality.
At what point do you decide what flowers of the millions of choices that you have to use?
Well, I think you see the design as a whole, but you're thinking all the time of how to make a frame for the flowers. So the trees, and the skyline, the hedges, even the horizontal lawn, it's framing the flowers.
Yes.
So then the flowers come really as furniture. You've made the setting. You've furnished the garden with flowers. I think that's how I see it.
Shows something when you have a love of gardens. You can tell the way people ask questions and how they walk through them. I was wondering, and I know your Gardens of the World talks about different gardens, the art and practice of gardening, but do you think you could take a trip around the world and just see certain gardens? Would that be enough of an interest to take a trip?
Yes, well, I think in a way what we were trying to do with Gardens of the World with Audrey is to take people a trip around the world, and we took them in the film, and we took them by this book. And I think you can do that, and if any tour operator would like me to be the leader, I'm absolutely willing. Let's do a round-the-world trip.
Where would you go? Just give me 2 or 3 famous gardens.
I would start in Europe in the great Italian gardens, and then go to France, and then probably to England. But what I would love to do is go to the Far East and Japan, and of course to tropical gardens. And then I would end up in America, and not only look at the old American estate gardens which still exist, I'd look at the new West Coast gardens where there's a lot of very exciting things happening, and there's a lot of feeling about not using all that wasteful water.
I was just going to ask you about
ecology.
that. Yes.
It's taught me such a lot coming here. I've really learnt a great deal from all the experts. You know, I lecture quite often in teams of American horticultural experts, and they, of course, are my educators, because I don't know about although I design here. When I design in America, I always use local experts or people who can help me.
Well, I'm glad that you don't have to worry about water maybe in England. I think all over the world we should be aware, and I'm glad that the West Coast was a beginning spot, and I'm glad you're looking at us.
And we have to be very careful.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so
Penelope,
much.
for being with us. I enjoyed meeting you and having you today.
I've enjoyed it too.
Thank you. Don't go, yes, go away, but come back next week, and we'll see you on the Joan Quinn Profiles.